Mr. Speaker, with your leave, I rise to make a few brief statements, a substantive statement in my capacity as Minister for National Security. But having regard to the statements that have come before mine, I certainly want to commend the Cabinet colleagues who have spoken before and for giving the country an update of the hard work that has been done behind the scenes to deliver on the stronger and safer future. And I'm certain that every reasonable citizen and resident here could appreciate that St. Kitts and Nevis is a blessed country, and we are fortunate at this time of crisis to have had a team unity government working clearly hard to keep our people safe and to provide for them in the moments of difficulty. I want to commend the Minister of Health, the member for St. Christopher III, for the update on the ongoing and evolving situation with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in particular, the continuing implementation of our four-pronged strategy to contain, reduce, and eventually defeat the COVID-19 situation in the country. And while in the context of a very evolving and fluid situation, our people always must keep themselves advised and prepared. At my press conference, I made the point which bears repeating. We are in a real war, a deadly war to that extent, where so far millions of persons around the world have lost their life in the battle with COVID-19. And even here, regrettably, we have seen a significant number of persons who would have lost their lives, and we mourn. I reflected on a statement of the Prime Minister of Grenada as he lamented that Grenada, within the last few weeks, have gone from about 0 deaths to 130. And I wondered, as he asked, what do Grenadians think when they see what this virus can do? Why some are so slow in doing the right thing to protect themselves? And the question he posed is one which everywhere we must ask in the context of the global hesitancy in the Caribbean and the hesitancy within the region. Why is it in the face of science? Why is it in the face of data? Some persons are being discouraged by anti-vaxxers, by political wannabes and armchair politicians not to get themselves vaccinated, when some of these persons have secreted themselves into some of these centers, got themselves vaccinated, while they are encouraging others not to do so, to create mayhem in the country. We certainly can defeat COVID-19, and we will use everything in our power to ensure that we do so. The public at large and every member of the community and of the broader society must do the right thing and must take personal responsibility. We are all, the vast majority of the persons over 18 constitute about 70% of the population. So we are talking in the main to adults. How often must they be reminded that the most important tool we have in the fight against the pandemic is the vaccine, delivered at tremendous negotiation, application of resources, people and money and time to get them here ahead of many other countries and make them available free of cost. And also to recruit persons, for example, the Cuban Medical Brigade, to help us in the administering of these vaccines. Made them available in 17 health centers in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Everything made easy for our people, and all that is left is for our people to heed, to get themselves vaccinated, and even while vaccinated, to abide by the protocols. And so we hope that as we move forward to our target of the 80% vaccination, that our people will move fast enough so that we can realize these objectives and we can move on in more fully opening up our country, which so far, and I want to commend all who have gone forward, we have about 75.9% of the population who would have moved forward and have had their first dose. And of all the independent countries within the region, St. Kitts is ahead in terms of its vaccination rollout. But we cannot be complacent in the context of the lived reality here and everywhere. Look how the numbers are moving every day. Look how they are moving, because there is non-compliance. We are not like countries in Africa and Europe and elsewhere who are suffering because there is no vaccines. We have more than enough vaccine to inoculate the entire adult population in St. Kitts and Nevis. We have more than enough. And we have two of the most widely used vaccines around the world here. The Pfizer vaccine, which now allows us, in addition to administering to adults, to be able to do so to our children between 11 and 17. And the AstraZeneca vaccine, which has the widest use around the world in terms of its application within countries, is also available. So I remind all those who would have had their first dose of that vaccine and were waiting for their second, that they can now go to any of our health centers and have their second dose. And those for whom that is their preference, the adult, they can move forward and do so. So again, commendations for what we have been able to do in healthcare, for what we have been able to do in education. Millions of dollars have been spent in getting our schools ready, and we continue to give the fullest support there. We now have an opportunity to halt the closing of our centers of learning from early childhood care delivery right up to college level, once our people, the parents, the guardians, the purveyors of education in these centers are vaccinated. Every student in our secondary schools, save largely for medical reason, should move forward and become vaccinated as soon as. That way we can ensure that our schools are safe for everyone. And every teacher must move forward with alacrity to lead by example, and because of their moral obligation to be an example to students, but also to keep the education setting safe. We need and we insist on these things happening the soonest available time. So we are plodding ahead in an organized way, and we are making progress. Although we are ahead of the class, there is still a lot more work which needs to be done. And I join the Minister of Health in commending the private owners of the labs that have been facilitating the COVID-19 tests. They have been with us from the beginning, and I want to commend those who are interested in expansion and to remind them that the government will give them full waiver of taxes and duties and all that is necessary for them to get their labs expanded, or even to bring new labs in operation, so that we can rely within to be able to deliver effective response to the COVID-19. I commend our teachers and administrators. I want to equally join and to commend Mr. Hamilton for his role, and he delivered two important reports. One largely with respect to the subject of social security, and identified three critical areas: the growth in the net asset, for example, and the fact that there being an extension of the time frame within which the reserve could potentially be expired should everything remain the same. That is, none of the recommendations were touched and the predictions remain as they are. I want to commend the Social Services Unit for its work and for the outreach to the very vulnerable persons within our midst. Minister Hamilton gave the quantity of supplies that have been made available. And just Tuesday, after our press conference, Mr. Abdiel Samuel took me on a tour of the warehouse and showed the substantial support that the National Emergency Management Agency has had from well-wishers. The largest contribution has come in terms of a 40-foot container that had been donated by one DevBart and has provided substantial quantity of foods, which will be shared according to his plan with our hospitals, with the Harris Home, and such entities, Garden Home, and so on, which is a wonderful thing that we have been able to do this. And I was reminded that all that we have been able to accomplish and the effectiveness with which we have been able to respond, we have been able to do this from local resources in the main. Just yesterday, I had sight of a statement from the former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Alan Trustney, in which he was attempting to explain to his successor in government how he had to get $300 million in loans to be able to respond in 2020. He borrowed $300 million. Other countries borrowed. Today, thank God, this country has not yet borrowed 1 cent to be able to fulfill our mandate to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And we have been able to do this because we had a track record of prudent fiscal management over the last 6 years. And so I want us to count among our blessings these things. And speaking to the blessings, of course, Mr. Speaker, bring me to note that the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season, which has been an above average one in terms of activity, is nearing an end. We saw evidence of this being a very busy season, even before the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season, which would normally begin in June 1st, and then in October, November 30th. As has become a pattern now, the first named storm revealed itself in May. This year is the 7th consecutive year in which a storm was formed before the official start of the hurricane season. So what we learned way back in our school days about June being too soon no longer holds in this new era of climate change. This hurricane season was forecast to deliver between 15 to 21 named storms, with between 7 to 10 becoming hurricanes, and 3 to 5 of these were anticipated to become major hurricanes. A major hurricane is so described if it falls in the category of 3 and above, 3 and higher. As of the 30th of September, that is today, there have been 20 recorded named storms, 7 of which developed into hurricanes, with 4 being described as major hurricanes. The Caribbean region has so far been impacted by Hurricane Elsa, Tropical Storm Fred, and Hurricane Grace. We in St. Kitts and Nevis have been fortunate that thus far we have not been impacted by any major tropical cyclone. Indeed, we had at one point had reason to fear the potential impact of Tropical Storm Grace, but this shifted and we were spared by God's mercies and grace. Equally, just recently, we had been monitoring closely the trajectory of Hurricane Sam. And at this point in time, it is no longer a hurricane of interest to us here in St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of its potential to impact us. I want to commend at this point in time, Mr. Speaker, the strong national mechanism that we have here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and which continues to monitor any potential impact to the Federation, whether it be tropical cyclone or otherwise. And in particular, I have to commend the director of NEMA and the staff at NEMA, Mr. Abdias Samuel, for their continuing commitment to comprehensive disaster management. In a real sense, Mr. Samuel has been an excellent find for that department, and one of the better appointments I commend myself to have made. And so I want to again commend him, and everyone here in the cabinet has come to know him. He is part of the regular appearance at cabinet meetings as receive update on the COVID situation. NEMA has proven that its all-hazards approach has been effective and is necessary. It is one of the critical coordinating institutions in our federation, and it has been part of the effective national COVID-19 response. In the context of NEMA, we want to recognize and commend the work of 10 national disaster subcommittees whose members continue to ensure that our federation remains prepared and ready to face any potential impact. For the record, the 10 subcommittees are housing and shelter, and for 2021, this committee is being chaired by Valentine Lindsay. Welfare, relief supplies and shelter management, is being presided over by Permanent Secretary Janelle Lewis. Foreign assistance, which usually becomes even more pronounced with the coming of hurricanes once the land and make significant impact. This is being presided over by Permanent Secretary Kebas. Search, rescue, and initial clearance is being presided over by Commander Anthony Comrie. Utilities by Darren Lloyd, the Ministry of Public Infrastructure. The environmental impact, critically important, with the importance of climate change in particular, and the consequences for that for our continuing habitation of planet Earth. Ms. June Hughes is the person presiding. Issues of transportation, that committee is headed by Carleen Henry Morton. Damage assessment and evaluation is led by George Gilbert at Public Works. Education, communication, and warning issues related to this matter are being handled by our Director General in the Government Information Service, the well-known Lesroy Williams, and the committee with responsibility for medical and public health is being presided over by Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris. There are two other important personalities who have done so much for our country by their unselfish service, their devotion to duty, that I need to add them. They are my cabinet colleagues, Senator Wendy Phipps and the Attorney General, Mr. Vincent Byron, who are co-chairs of the Mitigation Council. I want to thank them because in large measure it has been, by law, the responsibility of the Prime Minister. Traditionally, this has always been delegated to a cabinet minister, and I've found in these two excellent candidates for the choice. Every meeting I have attended, they have been there, working very hard and giving the support to the technicians and the private sector entities, for example, the Red Cross, the Chamber, and all others, because it is an all-of-society approach we are taking to this matter of dealing not just with the issues of hurricanes, but COVID-19, any hazard. And in fact, it's part of the new ethos of our governing strategy. And so I want to commend you, Attorney General, and to commend you, Minister Phipps, for your excellent work on this council and in providing the kind of support. Because at times when we put our technicians to work, they need to know that at the highest level of the government, people are observing their hard work, that their work is being appreciated, and to get assurance that they are working consistent with the government policy. Your presence on this particular council has given this kind of support to the committee members, and I want to thank you for being ever present at all of their meetings, virtually or otherwise. I also want to thank those at the Met Office who have been doing an excellent job. Mr. Burke is one of the senior personalities there, and he is regular in communicating with NEMA and with the Mitigation Council regarding what is happening and any potential threat from tropical cyclones. He's on the ball with the communication. So I want to thank them and to ask that our citizens and residents to commend them too for their work they have been doing in really keeping our federation safe and secure, and to ask and remind that we are not yet at the end of the hurricane season, so continue to pay attention. Indeed, in the context of the volatility of the issues in relation to climate changes, we do not know that the long-standing end of November can be held with any degree as being cast in stone. So long after the season has been officially ended, we can still experience significant tropical storms of concern. So again, be cautious, and we give God thanks, really, because we have been able to go through what has been one of the most busy, active hurricane season, and so far we have been spared by God's mercy and grace. So again, I commend the work of NEMA and all the associated institutions helping us in the management of the disaster. And I join Minister Hamilton before me in commending the wide cross-section of persons who have been given support, generous support in many cases, to the efforts of NEMA and to the work of the National Task Force on COVID-19. May it please you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.